This is Kathryn Goetzke, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life.
Well, hello, everyone. Listeners, super excited to be here today on the Hope Matrix podcast, bringing on a new acquaintance. I'd say maybe a year, maybe it's been about a year when I met you. Yeah. Oh my gosh. The most amazing story. I'm so grateful to present MaCherie. MaCherie, I love saying that name. Dunbar. I met MaCherie last with our International Day of Hope. Thank you to Zoya at Walmart. Little plug, Zoya, the ultimate connector. And MaCherie came and spoke and shared her story, and then we've since connected in DC, and just when you spoke, it was like it just touched me in such a deep way. So thanks, thank you first of all for doing that and sharing, and thanks for being here today and, diving deeper into just kind of who you are, your life, your experience, and what you've learned. And so thanks and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. It was such a pleasure to meet you and Zoya and quite a few others at the International Day of Hope last year. Such an incredible experience, so many amazing stories. And I was just really happy to be able to share a part of my own, and that it resonated with so many people in the room and even others who've heard it since then.
Yeah, absolutely did. And you're quite the eloquent speaker too. I mean, it was just like poetry in sharing that, some pretty deep, it was such a profound, the insights that you had on hope in such a deep, I've been studying this a long time. So I hear a lot of people talk about hope, and just, the way you spoke of it was just so, it felt like poetry to me, it was just really amazing. And then hearing your story and what you've been through and how you navigated it, how you've been able to navigate it and come out. And then, we meet in New York, and just really, really cool. So, the reason I do this podcast is I like, we can get into these depths of hopelessness and think nobody's been through anything similar. I can never navigate it. I can't manage my way out of it. This is like the deepest, darkest hole. And so I try to bring in people that have just, dealt with things and overcome them. And, it's kind of a process of overcoming and evolving. And your story is just, I think you have so much wisdom and insight to share with others. So thank you for being
Absolutely.
here.
And I think one thing to remember too is that it's not just a process for one individual event. We have multiple events over the course of our lives that we have to dig in and figure out our purpose that's going to keep carrying us forward. And I think our purpose and that hope is really tied together. So, I've had some moments of hopelessness and where I didn't have purpose, and I had to figure out how to navigate that. And so, if something that worked for me can work for someone else, great. We each one teach one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we talk about that too. We talk about moments of hopelessness. I mean, big or small, we go through moments all the time, like that despair and helplessness. And it's really how we navigate those moments that predicts, what happens to us in life. So, but I'm getting deep into this already. So let's just back up. And can you just share more about yourself and your background and who you are and where you're from?
Sure. I'm originally from upstate New York, Syracuse to be specific, so go Orange. I joined the Air Force at 18 years old, right after 9/11. I actually started the process before 9/11, and it carried through that. I joined the reserve. I got mobilized like many others did. A couple of deployments downrange to Iraq. Served for about 12 years, and then I was actually medically retired. And then got my degree in communication from the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. Came back to the East Coast, been all around, of course, came back to the East Coast, ended up with a wonderful opportunity to work for the U.S. House of Representatives, working with military and veteran portfolio, as well as about a dozen others over the course of 2 years. I've been with a few other veteran service organizations, led political action committees, house campaigns, state house campaigns, field organizing. We've done a lot in the last 10 years since getting out of the military, I should say, and much of it has been in the advocacy space. That's definitely where I've refound my purpose after service.
Wow. Yeah. And a pretty intensive service. I mean, a pretty intensive 12 years of service, too. It seems like you did a lot of different stuff and were engaged in a lot of different ways. And yeah, I mean, the military is a space, we know that the mental health conditions are, suicides are high. There are a lot of challenges. People getting out of military, it's very hard I haven't served in the military, but from what we hear, very hard to assimilate back into regular life. And so can you speak a little bit more to that, to how that was for you? And
Sure. I think my transition experience, well, I think all of our experiences are a little bit unique. There are certainly common themes, and those are with the lack of information. That certainly changed over the years with the transition assistance programs and how they're becoming more robust, but they're not at every base in the country. Not everyone is getting the information. Some people, especially higher level officers or higher level enlisted, who are leading until their very last day, are skipping those briefings and missing out on some really invaluable information. So a lot of the work that I've done since then has been to help expand those programs and make sure that more people get access to information, because, when you separate from the military, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, there's still life after that. Most of us are pretty young. Had I served a full 20 years, I still would have retired before 40. So, when you think about it like that, there's a whole other career out there for you. It could be, there's education needs, it could be business loans, so on and so forth, right? But I guess getting back to my personal experience, because I was already operating in the space, I was the president of my Student Veterans of America chapter for 2 years. So I was already helping people get access to education benefits or navigate other benefit processes, coordinating with veteran service organizations. So the base was like, we know you know your stuff already, so you can skip your transition program, actually. And, whether or not that was a good thing, I can't say I would have had more or less resources, but for me, the challenge was certainly in what's next. Even though I was still in the process of finishing college, I didn't know what I was going to do with my degree. I thought I was going to major in biology and go off to be some kind of doctor or physicist, but I incurred traumatic brain injuries during my time in service and struggled with the math and struggled with the science and, really had to figure out how to get through college at a time when they were just figuring out how to work with people with different types of disabilities, especially the ones you can't see. So I was doing work with the university to help them, better their veterans programs. And I think throughout my entire process, there's been some similar vein of helping others, which has somehow in turn helped me. And it took a couple of years, but once I found my purpose, which was ensuring some of the things that I went through, no one else had to go through, and figure out a way to get myself in position to affect positive change. Once I had something to hold on to like that, things changed for me.
Yeah. Wow. What you talk about the services that are available for veterans and the transition services. What are those? Like what, for people transitioning from military, like what does the veteran services offer to help in that regard?
The biggest one that I like to talk about is health benefits, and I like to describe it like a really tacky commercial, one of those like, did you, inhale, mesothelioma, or like, did you inhale particulates, right? So it's like, did you incur an injury during your time of service? If so, then you may be, warranted compensation. And it's very simple. Some people think you have to be missing a limb or have severe PTSD or, something like that. But no, does your elbow hurt every time you do push-ups, or when you try to put your t-shirt on? Does your back hurt? What are the things that started to happen, the wear and tear on your body through the Veterans Affairs? That's the government's promise to you for free healthcare. It's not TRICARE. TRICARE is not actually free, and it's not offered to everyone at the same rates at different times. But VA, if you had any injury, then there's your compensation. And through just 10% of compensation for those injuries, now you've got access to education benefits. Now you've got access to business assistance, could be business loans. You've got access to the housing loan and getting your funding fee waived potentially. I mean, there's tens of thousands of dollars of assistance out there for you. And then if you don't have any specific injuries, there's always mental health support that you can still get as well. So there's so much out there through VA, but you can't get it unless you file for those benefits or say, hey, something did happen to me. And maybe it didn't, but were you on the shooting range? Most of us have a little bit of tinnitus, right? Which is, I'm probably giving away some trade secrets, but it is an easy access point. If you've got some ringing in your ears, then guess what? You qualify for benefits, and go get them. I think there are a lot of people who say, well, someone out there's hurt worse than I am, so I'm not going to get the benefits so that they can. Well, you're not saving money for anyone else by not using it yourself. The money's there. As a matter of fact, so much of it goes unused. So it's just a matter of going and getting them.
Wow. Yes. So much of it goes unused. So you're not hurt. I can see, especially in the military, men wanting, I don't want to take that. I don't want to take it away from someone else. And so getting that message out there, I would think, is so important for that population that, use the benefits that are available. If you're hurt in any way, shape, or form, it's not weak to get support. It's quite the transition and getting back into civilian life. And it takes adaptation. And we know when we go through significant changes in life, hopelessness increases. Like, that's just how life is, because we have more challenges. We have more challenges in housing and relationships and healthcare and what's my new job. And, you think about everything changes when you come back, so many things. So how do we navigate that in healthier ways, and what resources are available? I think it's so important to get that message out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, certainly it's not just men. I mean, there's a stigma in the military in general, because the military wants you have to be tough. You have to be strong. You have to tuck away those aches and pains. But at some point, you've got to stand up and say, no, I'm hurting a little bit. I need some help for this. I need to get care. I need, and certainly if you're not going to do it in the military, you've got to do it before you get out so that the VA knows to continue care, and even when you're out of the military, if you need something, you have to have that strength and that vulnerability to stand up and ask for help, especially when you're approaching hopelessness. So maybe keep yourself from getting there.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you for that, pointing that out about men and women. Absolutely. So I was just having another conversation about specifically to men in the military, but yeah, absolutely. How did you navigate the stressors? Like, what were stressors coming back to live? I mean, were you deployed overseas or for part of it?
Yes, I deployed twice, both in 2007 and 2008, back-to-back deployments. And when I came back, I was a different person. And I don't even know if I could really describe it other than to say I just felt out of body in every situation I was in. It was, if I was talking to friends, I could see myself talking to them. It was like I was there, but I wasn't connected, things that mattered to them didn't matter to me anymore, because I'd just been in situations where I didn't have a toilet, or our convoy was taking on fire, or our base was being hit. And what I didn't know, and what ended up developing, was that not only did I have post-traumatic stress, which is something that I'm still dealing with today, but I also had brain injuries. And that was something that I didn't know for several years after my deployments. And so trying to understand all the changes that you're going through mentally and emotionally, and also missing a physical piece but, even having that as well, there's just so much to navigate. And I was still in the service, so I was trying to put a lot of it aside. And I remember we had, post-deployment health questionnaires, and they ask you all these questions about, are you having nightmares, and are you feeling, certain ways when you're in certain environments. And I just remember sitting there thinking to myself, how am I going to answer these questions? Because I didn't want to get flagged in a negative way and, pulled from duty, but I was really struggling. And I overheard someone else ask one of our senior enlisted members, hey, like, how should I answer these questions? And I overheard him say, just to be honest, and so hearing someone else, express that vulnerability allowed me to have the courage to answer those questions honestly. And unfortunately, it took 2.5 years for them to catch up to me with my responses to those questions and say, hey, we noticed you were having some challenges and you filled this out in your questionnaires, and what happened was I was trying to change duty locations, and that's when they caught it. And it just brought up all this stuff, and then it was, okay, I promise I'll get mental health counseling and start that process. But it was just a long journey of figuring out what was actually going on with me as I was experiencing different things.
What would you recommend to people that are listening that they do? Like, what would you share with them if they're having challenges and going through?
I would certainly say reach out and talk to someone. There's a variety of resources if you're still active duty or if you're already out of the military. Active duty has stuff like Military One Source or even vet centers. There's vet centers, I think, in most major cities and a few others all around the country. You can call a VA hotline. You can dial, I think it's 988, the National Suicide Hotline. I mean, there's a number of resources. And if things are really bad, just go to the emergency room and tell someone that you need help. But, ultimately, and I've faced moments, and actually I had an attempt where, for death by suicide. And it wasn't even necessarily that I personally was suicidal. It was that the circumstances around me were so extreme and so overwhelming, and not having the tools to adequately deal with it, and not also reaching out for help for someone that probably could have helped me. And, fortunately it didn't work, but when things are not right. If you're having persistent nightmares, if you're having persistent flashbacks, if you're avoiding a ton of different environments or activities because they're so triggering, if your interpersonal relationships are failing, if you're struggling at work, right? Like, you don't have to wait for someone to say to you, hey, go get some help. You can make a phone call and it can be as private as you need it to be, but ultimately you need to have that conversation, especially if big picture, you value your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, even if at the time you don't value your life, because that can happen, but that despair and helplessness, I mean, you can get back to the point of valuing your life. I mean, it's a distortion. If we're not valuing our life, I would say it's a distortion. We all have value here. We all have purpose. It's a matter of kind of trying to figure that out, navigating life, and it's so hard sometimes. It's, so challenging. And we often wait until we are in such a time of crisis to try to do anything about it. And if we wait until we're in suicidal states or attempting, it's, you've waited so long at that point. And so to me, I wish everyone in the military were required to get support and therapy or coaching or whatever we want to call it. Like, to me, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means it's a pretty normal response to things that are happening around you. I mean, and in life. And, I can't imagine. I mean, I can do my best at imagining, but, being what it would be like to be in the military and to going to combat, and then, to come back here and try to have conversations and like with what a lot of people talk about. It's just like, it's impossible to relate. I feel that way a lot of times just in trying to teach hope around that. Like the things some people, are concerned or worried about, or it is hard to relate, and it can be isolating. So I would assume it's something, in a different way for those that have served. So so reach out and get help. Do you think that and yeah, I mean, what a tragedy that it took 2.5 years to, flag anything. And like, to me, you being vulnerable on that survey and then probably having some kind of expectation about something, that someone will do something, and then not having that happen, I can only imagine would have just made it worse.
I mean, I actually think I was a little bit relieved that for a long time nobody called me, because that meant I didn't have to face it. Mm-hmm. And it was scary enough dealing with it and really not really understanding, right? Like I didn't have a PTSD diagnosis or PTS diagnosis or anything. It was just, we're back. And, I was in the type of unit where we had deployment exercises because we were a combat engineering squadron. And, there were just so many different things happening that, the military is always going to be focused on mission first. And, we can argue back and forth all day long if taking care of the person takes care of the mission. But there's a lot of other factors that come into play. And if you're deemed mentally unfit, well, now they've got to fill that slot. And, I think in the early 2000s, mentalities were very slowly shifting. They were shifting, but it was slow. When we think about mental health, I can't remember what year 22 a day became a famous slogan, and people were really paying attention to the fact that, wow, 1 in 5 are coming back with some sort of mental health issues or mental health challenges. So it's taken, and I mean, we think about, shell shock and, all the other things that it's been called over the decades, and it's taken till now for people to really put mental health at the forefront. And when I was a veteran service officer, meaning, I was an accredited representative, I helped people get access to their VA benefits. I would have people with 30-year careers sitting in front of me telling me stories that they have never told another person, never told their spouse, traumas and things that they were dealing with that they tucked away because they had to be leaders for their soldiers or, whomever. So it's tough. It's a tough internal battle to say, I need to focus on myself when we're literally here to put service before self. I think it's part of everyone's core value in some form or fashion.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you talk about PTSD, like the first thing we get into when we get into hope, and I, had developed PTSD from experience as a young child, and then also when I lost my dad to suicide. And so I had a lot of trauma to unpack in my older years. The first thing we teach are stress skills, how you identify and manage that stress response. And one of the reasons, like my triggers I was so triggery, and like I'd get triggered and then it just derails everything you hope for in life, right? That's when you turn to addiction or violence or partner violence or self-harm or kind of all of these things. So how did you manage your triggers? Like what kind of skills did you learn to use?
That was such a battle for me, trying to figure out what would work, and not even just what would work, but what I could remember when I needed it in the moment. And I can't tell you for how many years things would happen and I would react poorly, and it would be like, okay, what could we have done in that situation? How could we have handled it better? Until I was able to start thinking about it beforehand and finding ways to mitigate those things. And now to the point where, there's anyone that knows me, especially personally, that may watch this podcast is going to be like, yeah, she still got some stuff to work on. And, we've all got good days and bad.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
But I've gotten much better at catching myself in the moment, which has taken, I've been in therapy for more than a decade at this point, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I think it's been a phenomenal tool, and I've learned so much, and I've tried so many different modalities, and I've had different providers. And there are a few favorites, right? There's always these different breathing techniques that make us feel strange, but outside of that, I won't talk about breathing techniques, but removing yourself from the environment is often the quickest and easiest thing you can do. You pause the situation. If it's a phone call, if it's a meeting, it doesn't matter what it is. Take a break, get up, walk away, go to the bathroom, take some deep breaths, do your breathing exercises separately, but just separate yourself. If you do go to the bathroom, there's a method called TIPS that I really like, which has to do with putting cold water on those, on your wrists. You do your face, your ears, the back of your neck, just different ways to slow your blood pressure, slow down your pulse and your heart rate. Things like that. My therapist even tells me now to this day, like, make sure you have a song, that makes you laugh or makes you smile or just makes you want to dance and, shifts your mentality. So there's just lots of little things like that. Do some push-ups. I tell some of my friends, I relate it to animals and how they use displacement when they're either high stress or they have a lot of energy that they need to move, but really nothing to do with it, right? You get home, they're excited, they start shaking their toys, they're jumping all around, they're, throwing whatever, throwing bones or whatever. Like, that's their way of moving that energy around and getting that excitement out, that agitation out. And as humans, we can do the same thing. Do some jumping jacks, do some push-ups. We have a lot of different options.
Absolutely. And I think you bring a really good point of like, because it's so hard to get to manage it. But if we can start to kind of notice it, like when my triggers, I can start to feel it now before I even get to that. And I can start regulating it with my breathing, feeling my feet on the ground, like using my senses to just get present and to help prevent the escalation of that, which has been really critical for me in my own journey. And so becoming really in tune with our bodies and what our bodies are telling us. And if they start to feel that threat, I used addiction for a long time to numb myself. But then I had no awareness at any time of what was kind of happening in me. And so getting sober, in recovery, I started getting really clear, and it was hard because you feel it a lot more intensely, but it's learning how to move through that and navigate it. So yeah, super. I love the skills and that,
Yeah, I'm just glad I can remember some of them, especially on the spot. Cause if my therapist sees this and she's like, what is all this work we've been doing if you don't remember anything? No, it's, they're all great skills. And I think, like you said, really being in tune with your body and being able to moderate that is what's most important. And that takes time. It takes time to go, oh, when I hear these types of sounds, or I'm in these types of environments, or, my body's going to do this. These are all the things that my body can do. Because sometimes we don't realize that what is happening is actually a function of anxiety. And so we don't know to treat it as such. And so education around it is also very important. You can't just fumble your way through it. You really have to learn about it and understand it so you can know how to conquer it or how to manage it.
Absolutely. And sense too can trigger. They trigger responses in our body. We don't even process scent. It goes directly to our memories. So if you have smells associated with certain experiences, and there's a guy out in California that's doing a lot of work with virtual reality and desensitizing military veterans from like the scent of fire or gasoline, these kinds of things that trigger these, get us in these active stress responses. And learning that is to me the first step too.
Oh yeah, we had a whole fire department emergency at my grandmother's house a couple of years ago because I smelled what I absolutely knew was a fire in a house. I was convinced it was in the walls. And it was funny because I'm in the living room fixing a vacuum. My grandmother's in her dining room playing, solitaire on the computer. My dog is on the front porch, and I start smelling, and I'm like, I'm running all around the house. Where is this coming from? Grandma, I need to get you outside. There's a fire, right? I'm just full response mode. And I go to the front porch to grab my dog, and he's in the yard. And I was like, wait, what? Run around to the front yard. Now he's on the porch. So now I'm thinking I'm going crazy, right? Get my grandmother out, her cat, get my dog. I've already called 911. They show up, they're going through the house. They're like, there's no fire, there's nothing happening. There's a dead skunk in the front yard, by the way. And I was like, well, I don't know if that has to do anything, but like, can you double check? Because I know that I smell this fire. Anyway, it turns out, I guess my dog saw the skunk, tore through the screening on the front porch, killed it, got sprayed. So it was actually the spray from the skunk, but somehow I translated smoke, fire, and, the whole neighborhood was, outside wondering what was going on. And
Yeah.
still laughs.
Oh my gosh, I know. And that's good. I mean, the key is to like have compassion with ourselves and, as we go through all of these experiences and, it's part of our biology. It's part of what our biology is trained to. There's such an automatic response to some of this and it's learning,
It's very physiological.
Yeah. Did you use some V8 on the dog?
So I went to the grocery store and got some kind of like skunk remover concoction that they already had made. But what I didn't realize until I was in the store was that I smelled like skunk because I didn't know that he had been sprayed. I just grabbed him, and got him outside. And yeah, so I think happy. But yeah, he smelled like it for like 3 weeks. It was pretty terrible.
Yeah, that does stay around. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Which brings me to happiness habits. So, people, we know the importance of releasing endorphins or oxytocin, and especially when we are in times of great stress and we have elevated stress hormones. How do you do that in active duty? I mean, how do you, take care of yourself, release these positive hormones in healthy ways?
I think in active duty, most of us just go to the gym, quite honestly. That was the easiest way to relieve stress. And I mean, I think it depended on where you were in your career. If you're junior enlisted, if you live in the dorms, then you're going to have some limitations versus if you're off base, you have a partner, spouse, whatever. So, we definitely went to the gym as junior enlisted, but get a little older, get a little up in rank, you start traveling a little bit with some of your friends, just finding fun and interesting things to get into when you can take your leave, trying to stay connected with people back home, which can be a little bit of a challenge because you do kind of become a different person in the military. You have to, their whole job is to break you down and to build you back up in their standard of ethics, which may or may not be the same as your civilian friends. So, trying to make sure you maintain those commonalities, still doing the things that you know that you enjoy or that you grew up enjoying. Did you play sports? Did you like reading? Are you a little bit of a nerd like me and you like doing puzzles sometimes? Like what are those little things that bring you joy independently that you can still engage in? And then finding the things that you can do as a group as well, so that when you are experiencing those moments of sadness, you're not by yourself.
Yeah, you're with others. And you talked a little bit about this earlier, but we say in our work, pursuing passion is a happiness habit, or utilizing your strengths, or your purpose, activating your purpose, and you're doing a lot of that when you're deployed and in active service, but then we talk about when you get out. And so how did you redefine your own purpose and start activating your purpose in different ways?
That was a really slow process for me. And again, it took some time for me to rediscover purpose. And it wasn't until about 4 years after the military, I'd gotten some medical treatment for some injuries that happened in service. And one thing led to another. I'll keep the story short. Story short. My goodness. But I ended up homeless, and it was one of those things where I couldn't get assistance from any supportive services, not for veterans, not through Salvation Army, not from anywhere, because what I was getting from VA was $97 over the national poverty limit. So I was in a situation where I was with, my animal, and I had a service dog. I have a service dog, and we didn't have anywhere to live, so I had to stay with friends or sleep in my truck, or my dog would stay here and I would stay there. And it was like this for several months. This in conjunction with the suicide attempts that I had just had at the end of 2016. And there were a couple of things that happened between those time periods. Number one was, after the attempt, I realized I had to completely change my life in order to dig myself out of this mental pit of despair that I was in. I had been very heavily medicated by the VA for 5 years. I did not recognize myself, so I fought very hard to come off all the medications. It took about 9 months. I went through constant period of withdrawal because I was on some very heavy hitters. My mental health provider later told me she didn't think I was going to make it, but I was determined. I needed to hit the reset button because I didn't recognize myself anymore. And I think, had I not fought for that, I wouldn't have even made it to 2018. The second thing I did was I got a SERP dog, needed one, because I was just completely avoiding everything in life. And the third thing I did was I got active in the community. I started volunteering with a veteran service organization and became a veteran engagement director and began helping other people and infusing myself in those situations. So by the time I went through that situation in 2018, where I became homeless and now I can't get access to resources, I'm now seeing multiple components of this system that's supposed to help veterans fail people, because it was failing me time and again. And it was when I realized what's happening to me shouldn't happen to anyone. Like, this is crazy. I was 34 years old with a bachelor's degree. I had savings when things first started happening, and now I'm homeless. This shouldn't happen to anyone. And so, I dug deeper. I reached out to friends who I knew were politically affiliated. How can I get involved? And I just started putting my drive, I can't even say skill set. I mean, I worked as an equipment operator for the last 9 years of my career. And then my college degree was in communication. It's very interesting, right? But I didn't even really have a skill, so to speak, other than, I can write a paper, I could speak fairly well. What can I do, and just started getting myself into different rooms and having different conversations and, participating in lobbying efforts and doing everything I could to learn everything about VA and TRICARE and DoD systems that I might not have already known, and all of the policies that affected us as veterans, and, who was suffering between, we'll say the standard veteran, what people think of when they hear a veteran, which is typically a Caucasian male, versus your non-traditional veteran, women, LGBTQ, Black veterans, brown veterans, so on and so forth. So, just figuring out where all the gaps were so that I could plug as many of them as I possibly could. And once I held on to that, there hasn't been anything really that can stop me. Not disagreements with employers, excuse my lighting, not anything, because I'm the kind of person that I'm going to fight for myself, and I'm going to keep fighting for other people no matter what. That's what gets me up every single day, is knowing that I'm helping people.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You have such an amazing, like, the strength within you. I mean, I felt it the moment I met you and saw you speaking, and just really incredible. What would you say to someone that's homeless right now? I mean, where do you start? If you're in that despair and helplessness, like, what's the first, how do you?
Goodness. I mean, if someone is currently homeless, there are different resources. I would say there's expanded resources for lots of different types of people. Are you, a person that has your children? Are you experience any kind of substance abuse? Have you had any types of trauma, sexual or otherwise? Are you a veteran? What group do you belong to? Because there's definitely got to be a resource out there for you, or there's someone that you can connect with that's going to work hard to help you find those resources. And there's so many reasons why people become homeless. So it's certainly not a one size fits all. For me, it was, I didn't have enough savings to, deal with the other things that were going to fall out. For some people, it is substance abuse. For some people, it's natural disaster. So, I think if I had control over homelessness, I would do things a little bit differently than the way a lot of people do it. But you have to be willing to get the help. And I know that there are some people who are not. But if you're willing to get the help, don't stop fighting for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Amen to that. I, often talk about in finding our purpose, especially with young kids, that it's like, what makes you angriest in the world, or what breaks your heart, what makes you the saddest, or what are you the most afraid of, and like dig deep into those feelings and then figure out how to that, like, to me, that's what you care most about. So we're kind of taught we want to feel good all the time. Well, actually, like, that feeling those feelings can really lead us to our purpose, can tell us what we care so deeply about. And then it's about using our skills to make a difference in that space.
Well, and I was gonna say, and just remember, it's not the end all be all. You're gonna choose something that fires you up when you're 7, and it's gonna be something different when you're 17, and it's gonna be something different when you're 27. I mean, my grandmother, she passed away last year. And when we were putting together, the program and all this, we're listing all of these jobs that she had, these careers that she had. And it was like, the list just went on. I mean, she was a radio DJ. She was a college professor. She was a private investigator. She wrote a book. I mean, and that's like a quarter of the list. We're going to do more than one thing. We're going to be passionate about more than one thing, and allow yourself the room and flexibility to grow and change into that.
Yes, absolutely. And change again, and then change again when you keep figuring it out. So many people don't become successful to their 60s or so. Like, I love those stories where, they find their genius or whatever so late. So yeah, such an important. So what about, would you have any words of wisdom for someone that's transitioning from service life to, regular life back here, in terms of finding their purpose or figuring out what they should be doing next? They're just struggling.
I would say take your time and give yourself grace and compassion. If you left the military on the best terms and you feel really good about everything, it can be really hard to figure out what's next. And there could be the natural inclination to do what you did in the military. You could do that if you wanted to. Or you could take the time and explore other things and find out what it is that brings you joy. And that's if you have the luxury of doing that, of course. Not everyone can. But if you do find yourself struggling financially, go out and get some resources. There's a ton of places, a ton of nonprofits that if you need help with, a deposit on your rent, or, a grant for home buying, or if you need a couch, or if you're behind on, your payments, there are resources out there to help you all over the country. So don't think there's nothing, and just give yourself time. I've been out for almost a decade. It'll be 10 years this year. And just in the last 2 years, I've also discovered that I'm actually an artist. I paint. I put acrylic on canvas and I make some pretty cool things. And, I think about being a kid and I like to color. I was never an artist. I was never a painter. I took 2 weeks of art appreciation in college, right? So no real training. But it's something that really brings me joy, and I want to put time and energy and attention into. So I'm structuring my life around that. It doesn't have to be this rigid thing. Allow yourself space to find joy, no matter what it is that you're doing.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes, and you're about to head out. Speaking of joy, you're about to head out on a trip. I'm so excited. And where are you going again? Share.
I'm starting in Singapore, and then Bali, and then Thailand, and then Mexico. And Mexico's a huge jump, but it's part of a group trip. And so I've built everything else around that. And I'm going to be gone for a month. It is mostly solo travel, which is something I've never done before, especially internationally. So I'm really excited, more excited than nervous. But yeah, I'm ready.
Well, that is awesome. Well, you have my WhatsApp number, so you can I've traveled primarily alone for most of my life. Like, I've done so many. So you need anything, just reach out, or it's yeah, it's amazing. That's so great for you. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, traveling is one of my biggest happiness habits and greatest joys, exploring cultures and people, and it's kind of losing myself in different places. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and not a lot of people take the time to do it. There's this culture in America that says we've got to work and we've got to pay the bills and we've got to circulate money and we've got to, right? But we've also got to take care of ourselves so that we can continue to work and continue to do those things. And a lot of people just don't even take their vacation time, that's in your contract. Take your vacation time, focus on your mental health, focus on your physical health, go have fun. I think I was telling you before we hit record that every week I delay, more things populate into my calendar. There's never a good time. But, I also lost my uncle last year. And one of the last things he said to me was, if there's anywhere you want to go, if there's anything you want to do, don't wait, go do it. Life is too short. And then a couple weeks later, he dropped dead unexpectedly. And that's a lesson I can't ignore. We talk about other things that we can do. And, I have gratitude. I wake up in the morning, I look out my window, I see where I live, I see the lifestyle I provided myself at this point, and I'm just so thankful because things could be so different. And starting off your day with a little bit of gratitude or finding moments in your day to pause and go, I'm really doing this. I'm really taking care of myself. I'm really handling my business. I managed to brush my teeth today, whatever it is, right?
Right.
Just find gratitude in something, and keep building on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, I am so grateful to have had you on. We, you can see we had an International Day of Hope last year where we made the case for why we believe we need an International Day of Hope around the world, where we kind of activate and elevate the science of hope and what is hope and how do we hope and how do we become more hopeful and why is hope important in life. And so we're working hard to get that done. I've met with the ambassador of Romania. I'm excited to share, and they are looking to help support this event. So I'm not sure yet when it's going to be, but we're going to start. We have an event at the UN on April 3rd, and so we're going to start working on that after April 3rd. So I'm super excited about that. To all you listeners, if you want to hear MaCherie's story on the International Day of Hope site, you can, or, why hope is important, not necessarily your story, but really why is hope important? Why do you see hope as important? It was really a beautiful talk and really compelling. And I love the just diversity of voices and ideas we had at that day. And then if you want to connect with MaCherie, you can do so on LinkedIn. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe it's just LinkedIn / MaCherie Dunbar. So
awesome. And you do a lot of consulting in veteran services and keynote talks and really can help people activate. I think the reason I do this podcast and this work is to showcase how people are successfully navigating really challenging times. And that's how we learn. I can teach veterans about hope, the theory of hope, the science of hope, what we know activates hope, but we learn from other people that have been through similar experiences. So you bringing that to population, so important. And, I'm so grateful to have gotten to spend some time. Is there any final thoughts or anything else you want to share?
Oh, I really appreciate you having me on. And for anyone that does go and listen to the talk, it's a little bit of a deeper dive into my time serving during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. As at that time, an out but closeted lesbian, I did a little bit of both at the same time. And, what things have been like since. So it's a slightly different spin than the things that we've been talking about today. And not only do I consult with veterans issues, I also do LGBTQ-based issues, strategic planning, things like that. So please feel free to reach out and connect. Kathryn, it's been an absolute pleasure connecting with you again.
Oh, thank you. You too, MaCherie. I appreciate it. And I wish you a fantastic journey over this next month. And seriously, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for you. And all you listeners, thanks for listening in. Please be sure to share this episode with others. It's important we get the word out that there are resources available and things that we could do to activate hope, but most especially in the veteran population. So thank you so much, everyone. Have an awesome day and keep shining. Take care.
So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out theshinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Heroes, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course, so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn Goetzke, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.